My mom ignored my call for help in an emergency, and what I discovered changed everything forever. I always thought my life was somewhat normal, amidst the chaos everyone experiences at home. My name is Raphael. I'm 17 years old, and for a long time, I felt invisible in my own family. My mother was always so worried about my sister Helena that it felt like I could disappear and no one would notice. It's not that she hated me or anything, but her attention was completely consumed by her health, crises, and I grew up learning to swallow my own needs, my fears, and even my pain. I got used to feeling small, to pretending to be strong just to avoid getting in the way. But that day, everything changed in a way I'll never forget. It was a random Saturday, and I started feeling a pain in my abdomen that grew worse by the minute. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking it might just be something I'd eaten, but the pain became unbearable, throbbing, and it felt like no one would hear my body. Screaming. I stayed alone in my room trying to calm myself, but every breath I took made it hurt more. I called my mom, asked her to check on me, and she came over with that distracted look on her face, thinking I was overreacting, that it was teenage drama. In that moment, I felt a mixture of fear and anger, as if my body were begging for help and my mom couldn't see it. It was the first time I realized how truly alone I felt. My sister Helena noticed before anyone else. She came into the room, helped me sit up, brought me water, and tried to calm me down. I looked at her and felt enormous relief, but at the same time, a huge sense of guilt for depending on her. I'd always tried to be independent, never wanting to be another problem in her life, but at that moment, there was no way out. I needed someone who would truly see me. Helena held my hand and told me the pain wasn't my fault, that Mom would understand later. I believed her because, for a long time, she was the only one who truly looked at me and cared, even when I didn't say anything. When my mother finally understood the seriousness of the situation and took us to the hospital, fear mixed with suppressed anger. I had acute appendicitis, and it was only then that she realized her distraction could have cost me my life. In the emergency room, as the doctors tended to me, I saw my mother sitting, her hands shaking, looking at me with guilt and despair. It was a mixture of relief and frustration. Relief that I was being cared for, frustration that all of this could have been avoided if she had seen me sooner. It was hard to realize that for years, my pain and my needs had been invisible. What struck me most was the feeling of helplessness. I could no longer pretend everything was fine. I couldn't swallow what I felt and carry on as if nothing had happened. That day showed me that I needed to fight for myself, that I couldn't wait for others to spot my signs alone. I also saw that my mother wasn't evil, just overwhelmed and blinded by concern for my sister. It was there, in that mixture of pain, fear, and anger, that something inside me shifted. I began to understand that I needed to stand up for myself, show that I mattered, and that I could survive this neglect without carrying the weight alone. After the surgery, the time in the hospital was a shock of emotions. I was hurt, fragile, and in pain, but also more aware of how much my mother needed to change the way she saw me. I saw in her a mixture of guilt and fear that I had never felt so intensely before. She didn't say much, but her looks and the way she held my hand said it all. She had finally understood that ignoring me had real consequences. And I, even though I was still hurting, felt the need to forgive, but also to set boundaries, to make it clear that my voice needed to be heard from then on. My sister Helena was with me through it all. She scolded me when I tried to hide my pain, encouraged me to ask for help, and reminded me that my mother wasn't perfect but could learn. She was my anchor, the one constant reminding me I wasn't alone. Seeing my sister so strong, even dealing with her own chronic pain, inspired me. For the first time, I felt I could truly count on someone in my family and that perhaps I could teach my mother to see me too. When I returned home, I felt a huge weight. My already difficult routine became even more intense. Appointments, medications, worries about my health and my sister's. But now I had a clarity I'd never had before. I realized I could no longer swallow my frustrations. I had to sit down with my mother and, with difficulty, explain how I felt. She cried, apologized, and promised she would try to see my needs without comparing them to Helena's. That didn't solve everything immediately, but it was a start, a real recognition that I mattered. Over time, I began to notice small but significant changes. My mother began asking me how I was, listening when I complained of pain or fatigue. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of forgetfulness, but there was a genuine intention to balance. And I learned that I didn't need to wait for everything to be perfect to feel like I mattered. I learned that my voice had weight and that I could fight for attention without feeling guilty or ashamed. That experience showed me that I could be seen even in the midst of so many crises. What struck me most was the sense of responsibility for my own care. For the first time, I understood that I couldn't completely depend on others' attention. I began researching my symptoms, organizing myself with medication, and noticing warning signs in my body. This gave me a strength I didn't know I had. I learned that taking responsibility for my own care wasn't rebellion or a lack of trust in my mother, but rather a way to protect myself and fully exist. It was scary at first, but liberating at the same time. After leaving the hospital, I realized that a lot needed to change at home. My mother was still overwhelmed with Helena, but now there was a real awareness that I, too, needed to be a priority sometimes. I was afraid to demand attention, having been invisible for so long, but I also felt a silent urge to assert myself. That experience showed me that my body could no longer be ignored and that my desperation was justified. I had to learn to put myself first without guilt. Helena remained my ally, always spotting warning signs and reminding me to take care of myself. I realized that even when she was sick, she had a strength that inspired me. She supported me, encouraged me to speak up, and even helped my mother understand that I couldn't be treated like a dramatic teenager. For the first time, I felt a balance, albeit a fragile one, between the care we received and respect for our individual voices. This gave me hope that our family could learn to care for each other more equitably. My mother began to listen to me differently. When I complained of pain or discomfort, she now asked questions, tried to understand, and didn't minimize my complaints. It still frightened me because it wasn't automatic, but I noticed the effort. I felt she was trying to see me as a whole person, with legitimate fears, pains, and needs. This made me realize that her neglect wasn't malice, but a reflection of her exhaustion and overwhelm. Understanding this gave me patience and empathy, even when it still hurt me. Ultimately, that episode taught me the importance of demanding my rights at home. I didn't have to wait for my mother to notice my pain. I could speak up, communicate my limits and needs without fear. It was scary at first, but I felt stronger afterward. The experience of nearly being ignored in an emergency gave me clarity about who I was, what kind of relationship I wanted to have with my mother and my family, and how to protect my own emotional well-being. The emotional impact of that day still lingers with me. Sometimes when I'm in pain or anxious, I remember feeling alone and the urgency I felt for help. But now I also remember the strength I found, my sister's support, my mother's change, and most importantly, my ability to fight for myself. I learned that I can survive others' failures without destroying myself, and that even amid unintentional neglect, there is the possibility of rebuilding trust and care within my family. After everything that happened, I began to notice small changes in the family dynamic that I hadn't even noticed before. My mother became more organized, trying to balance her attention between Helena and me. She still made mistakes sometimes, but there was a visible effort. This gave me a sense of relief, mixed with caution, because I knew that real change takes time. It was strange to feel hopeful after so much abandonment, but I began to believe that I didn't have to carry the responsibility of being hurt alone. I also noticed how much more aware I became of my body and my needs. Before, I'd swallow any pain or discomfort, thinking it was drama. Now, I've learned to recognize warning signs and speak up without fear. I discovered that taking care of myself didn't make me selfish, but rather stronger. It's amazing how being nearly ignored in an emergency situation can awaken a strength you didn't even know you had. That experience taught me to fight for myself, even when no one else notices. Helena continued to be my source of support, even while dealing with her own condition. She was present and attentive, reminding me that my pain was real and important. I felt a mix of gratitude and guilt for relying so heavily on her, but at the same time, I realized our bond was strong. She helped me learn that I didn't need to carry the guilt of seeking attention or care. This relationship gave me the confidence to begin to trust that my mother could also learn to truly see me. My mother, in turn, began asking my opinion on medical situations, even minor ones, and listening to me without interrupting or minimizing. It was awkward at first, because I wasn't used to being taken seriously, but then I began to realize that she genuinely wanted to get better. This change brought enormous clarity. I realized that her neglect wasn't contempt, but a reflection of the stress and fear of juggling so many responsibilities at once. Understanding this gave me empathy, without erasing the pain I felt. The experience taught me something essential: the importance of putting yourself at the center of your own life. We can't completely depend on others to see or protect us. I learned to value my feelings, communicate my needs, and refuse to be made to feel invisible. I still deal with the emotional scars from that day, but I also carry with me the certainty that I can speak up, demand care, and rebuild relationships even after serious failures. It's a daily learning process, but a transformative one. Looking back today, I realized that that day of pain and near abandonment was a turning point in my life. I was 17, feeling invisible in my own home, but I learned that my voice matters and that I can fight to be seen. I still carry fear and scars, but also a strength I never knew existed. I learned the importance of prioritizing myself without guilt, of acknowledging my feelings, and of demanding care when needed. That experience taught me that surviving other people's failures is possible, and that pain can be transformed into learning. My relationship with my mother changed gradually. It wasn't immediate nor perfect, but there was real effort on her part. Today, she truly listens to me, asks how I am, acknowledges my needs, and tries to balance the attention she gives to Helena and me. I still feel angry and frustrated at times, but now I know I can speak up without fear. This process taught me patience and the importance of recognizing when someone is trying to improve, even after serious mistakes. The change was slow, but it was real. Helena continued to be my pillar, and our bond grew stronger. She didn't let me carry the blame alone, reminded me that seeking help isn't a weakness, and supported me every step of the way to be heard at home. Having someone who truly sees me made all the difference. It showed me that genuine support can exist even in imperfect families. Today, I understand that we don't need to expect perfection from others to survive and thrive, but rather seek support and strength where it truly exists. I've also learned that taking responsibility for my own body and emotional health is liberating. Before, I lived for the attention of others, but now I know I can and should protect myself, communicate my needs, and not let anyone else decide for themselves whether my pain is important. This learning has given me clarity, confidence, and hope. Even dealing with emotional scars, I can feel more secure, more alive, and capable of facing challenges without destroying myself. In the end, that experience transformed me profoundly. Today, I can see my emotions, put myself at the center of my life, and build more balanced relationships with my family. I still deal with the wounds, but they no longer define me. I learned to be resilient, to fight for myself, and to believe that even after unintentional neglect and pain, it's possible to rebuild trust and care. I know I will continue to grow and learn, but I also know I survived, and that is already a huge victory.